what does community, trauma healing, and personal development have to do with spirituality? I see a lot of confusion around this topic. Because for so many people, it seems like personal development, growing in a particular direction, for instance, contradicts the idea of a non-duality or transcendence, transcending the personal self in order to realize the source or God. Or the idea that healing the personal self or working on transcending or working on healing trauma, for instance, once again would rather place the capacity in the hands of the person rather than actually surrendering this issue to the divine. And so there's all kinds of back and forth between this idea of transcendence, surrender to God, relinquishing a personal self, and then, improving a personal self, working on very specific issues in the personal life. And then the question comes up, like, why is that? Why does there seem to be this constant, conflict or this duality between these two aspects of so-called spiritual practice, in a sense? Or like, what's the actual goal? Like, what's the goal of spiritual practice to begin with, right? And I would say the actual goal is the realization of the true self. The realization of the true self as not apart from God. Realizing oneself to not be separate from the Creator, separate from the source. And therefore, decompressing all of the life issues that have formed as a sort of compensation mechanism to feeling separate from the source. Now, if we are not separate from the source, and in reality, nothing is separate from the source, wouldn't that mean that we have the inherent capacity within this formulation, within this material existence, to then enter into a state of what I would call circuitry with other beings, with other people, with our brothers and sisters, if you will, right? And this is exactly where the missing link can be found, in my opinion. Because we can enter into connection with other people in a way that is aligned, life-affirming, and pointed towards source or spiritual reality. Or we can enter into association with other people in a way that is life-negative, that is degenerative, that is life-denying, and moving us further and further away from the source, from recognizing our actual unity with the Creator. And so that's where everything is sort of brought together, in my view. So whenever we want to heal something in our personal lives, whenever we want to improve something in our personal lives, it's always somehow, in one way or another, about finding greater alignment, finding greater currency, finding greater circuitry with God ultimately, greater entering a greater state of communion with God, right? Being touched by God more directly, allowing ourselves to enter into a state of greater circuitry. And likewise, anyone who has ever enjoyed a worshiping the divine within their community, worshiping God within their community, they understand that if that is a true practice of worship, if there is a genuine passion for serving God, for worshiping God in that community, there is this genuine brotherhood, there's this circuitry of energy, this energy circulating in that congregation, in that community, which reaffirms the Spirit and relieves us of all of these, like, a lower self burdens, in a sense, as a result. And likewise, that would also be the reason we would engage in certain life disciplines in order to not let our energy disperse into further fragmentation, but accumulate enough energy to remain buoyant in a spiritual sense, right? So, point being that coming together with others, establishing, practicing that sense of circuitry, practicing a sense of energetic communication, practicing that being together in the Spirit, coming together in light with others, is what reaffirms that greater circuitry, that Spirit identification, reaffirms the truth of who we are and how we were actually created, rather than, reaffirms the limited self, the one that is not connected to the source, the one that feels completely isolated and doesn't even know it has such a thing as a creator. And so that is where community, trauma healing blockages in one's own personal energy field, in one's person, all of these kinds of things, overcoming certain things, where all of that meets a, transcendental spiritual practice, because the energy, the spirit that makes itself known more and more and more and more, that great unifying presence, wants to be acknowledged in this sort of like separative field, in this three-dimensional world in which we're all feeling and appearing to be separate from one another. The source of life, the Spirit, wants to very much come forth in this realm, be acknowledged, be recognized, and be the source of inspiration for our lives. It wants to elevate us out of this seeming state of separation and reveal to us the source of life. And so working in the relative domain, actualizing certain potentials in the relative domain, healing certain things in the relative domain, are one side of the coin, whereas meditation, surrender, zooming out, relinquishing investment in the physical realm, and identification with the body, you could say is the other. But the wholeness, which encompasses both and which wishes to expand, is not at all dependent on you negating your personal life or your identification with the body or anything like that at all. It's not dependent on that. It's not even interested in that. It does not require you to abandon improving the person, growing as a person, and all of it. It's not requiring the abandonment of your life journey at all. But at every intersection of life, there is such a thing as a life-positive response and a life-negative response. One response leads us further into fragmentation, further into suffering. And we see that a lot in the world right now. There's still a lot of this life negative patterning happening. These very, you could say very dark forces at play. And it's so normalized that we're sort of desensitized to it. We're supposed to think that it's normal. And that genuinely life positive ways to associate as human beings are sort of extraordinary and unusual. But that's just a sign of these times at the moment. And regardless of how challenging it is in the environment that we're in, it's still the only true choice to make is, are we going to respond in a faithful, life-positive, life-affirming manner which honors God? Or are we allowing ourselves to succumb to the degenerative patterning that is so predominant in the world right now? And once again, if we keep that idea of brotherhood or community in mind, there is a vibrational aspect to that as well. The more of us choose to prioritize a life of alignment, the more circuitry again is generated, and the more we will be able to uplift one another and find refuge in the field that is being created by a shared practice. I believe that is what Jesus meant when he said that when two or more are gathered in my name, I am among them. That whenever two or more come together with the intention to receive the Holy Spirit, that Spirit will descend, will come in. But for that, we have to be receptive. We have to be available. We have to be vulnerable, available. We cannot be in the mode, in the defensive mode in which we constantly reaffirm our separate identity, in which we essentially just try to defend our memory-based sense of self. We have to be willing to relax. We have to be willing to let an alternative touch us. We have to be willing to let God touch us. We have to be willing to trust God. And then once again, understanding the relative self to the best of our ability, understanding the traumas that we're all, to one degree or another, patterned with. Understanding all of these dynamics helps us to not fall into it, or to keep enough awareness available, to keep enough distance in order to let the fresh air of spirit come in and heal us. It's never our own effort that heals us. Our own effort generates the availability that's needed. But what heals us is always the communication of spirit in the end. And that's not something that was necessarily meant to happen in isolation. That's something that is meant to happen in community. That's meant to happen in relationship. By that, I don't just mean like romantic relationship. I mean any kind of relationship, friendship, coworkers, family, anything. Wherever there is this tension, sense of separation, all kinds of unconscious forces keeping this friction alive that prevents a natural, balanced flow of energy. Our natural state is at rest, is peaceful, is full of joy. It's not burdened by lack, by anxiety, by any of that. It's just at rest. It's happy, it's peaceful, it's joyous, it's alive, it's creative, it's humorous. But we've developed all kinds of protective mechanisms that block our energy. We contract. That's why it's often around a very small set of people that we feel like truly relaxed, where we truly feel like our energy is flowing. We open up and everything is okay. Because they represent a vibration of safety to us. But yeah, we're not meant to live in that contracted state as a result of adapting to a world in which love has not yet become the baseline. So regardless of whether we are engaged in a practice on the relative level of healing, of improving ourselves or improving relationships or serving others, or if we're engaged on a more immersive, transcendental practice, the point is the same. Really, the point is the same. In both cases, we're affirming the spiritual reality. In both cases, we are practicing becoming available to the flow of the spirit, whether it's in solitude and meditation or whether it's in relationship, therefore the allowance for circulation of this life force, the spiritual force. So we don't need to, while it makes perfect sense that we take time in silence, or that we go on a retreat sometime, or have time in which we, set aside some quiet for prayer. It's perfectly appropriate and makes perfect sense. But those are not the only times in which we can be at rest and in which we can experience communion. So bringing this work into the level of relationships is crucial for expansion and for growth. I hope this is helping someone out there, and much love to you.